All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Phaedra Jackson, and I am the Vice President of Unit Advocacy and Effectiveness here at the NAACP. We are extremely excited to have this very timely conversation around defending democracy together. This is a community call to action. So the NAACP is excited to join many of our partners in the civil rights space to have this very timely conversation. We are looking forward to being in community and holding space for everyone to come with innovative thoughts and ideas and ways that we can connect as community. We will have two very strategic conversations tonight. Our first conversation will be anchored by all of our civil rights principles, and they will be having a conversation around how our communities are reacting in this moment. We will then transition to a conversation about bridging our communities. And in that conversation, we look to have an intergenerational conversation with student activists, with NAACP leaders, and with elected officials. And so I don't want to delay these important conversations. So we're going to dive right in. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you my boss, Chief Dominic Whitehead, Chief of Field here at the NAACP.
Thank you so much for that, Phaedra, and for this. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to this community call. I'm using the word community. This is not an all NAACP units. We have partners from across the civil rights movement and our core civil rights organizations on this evening to really talk about the moment in terms of where we are. Over the last 8 months, it has been 8 months. Over the last 8 months, there has been a lot that has been happening and with this current administration, not just at the federal level, but we're seeing it at the state and local level. When we think about things that are happening, the militarization of policing, when we're thinking about the continuing and the continuing forces that are focusing in with when it comes to white supremacy around that, when we're seeing in states, particularly like in Texas, when it comes to redistricting and really just setting the clock back for us and our people. And so this evening, we wanted to come together to really set the tone in a very different way. All of our civil rights organizations across the ecosystem have been coordinating and collaborating and communicating and thinking through strategies, not only at the national level, but we know this is happening at the state and local level. And so when we think about the call this evening, it is to bring folks together to talk about our strategies, to talk about how we are ready for the front line and how you all are on the front line, but also how we're protecting ourselves. We're seeing a lot of political violence happening across the country. And so what does that mean not only for NAACP, but organizations like NCNW, who's in the thick of things with us, right? Organizations like the Legal Defense Fund, Lawyers Committee, who's doing great work with us as well. Organizations like the Leadership Conference, who's on with us as well. Organizations like Melanie Campbell and the work that she does in coordinating and making sure we're doing what it is that we need to do. So we're going to hear about that this evening. And then also, what does it mean to mobilize in this moment, right? We still got to mobilize and show up in this moment because we know that we are ready for this moment. So we'll talk through that this evening. Before we get started and fully dive in, I would like to introduce our criminal justice chair for the National Board of Directors, Mr. Scott Esdale, who has been really working with the national team here to really think through our strategy as it relates to all things of the militarization of policing that we're seeing here in Washington, D.C., but it's going to be happening in cities like Memphis. We know this is a target on black cities, particularly black mayors, particularly black police chiefs in this country. And so Scott is going to walk us through our larger strategy and the work that we've been doing here at the national office and just set the tone there. Scott?
Thank you, Chief Whitehead. We are coming together at a moment when the stakes could not be higher for our communities. It's critical that we hear the perspectives of the heads of our nation's civil rights organizations because we cannot afford to be out of alignment. Our collective voice is our strength. If we speak in one chorus, we can make sure people understand that public safety must be rooted in justice, economic equity, and the dismantling of systemic inequities, not fear. As the chair of the NAACP National Criminal Justice Committee, I am glad we are having this conversation because it's long overdue. Too often our communities are painted as problems rather than partners. We are told that community-driven policies do not work or are not tough enough. But let us be clear, you cannot separate the crisis of public safety from the crisis of concentrated poverty. Decades of disinvestment, redlining, and economic exclusion have trapped generations in cycles of violence and despair. We know violence prevention, credible messenger programs, reentry services, targeted investment in affordable housing, living wage job creation, and full funded schools in marginalized neighborhoods reduces crime in meaningful ways. These solutions are not headline grabbers, but they are life changers. We must remind the nation that safety is not just the absence of crime, it's the presence of opportunity. And opportunity cannot flourish where poverty is concentrated and deliberate. We cannot accept a future where our communities are policed by people who are not of the community, who do not understand our neighborhoods, our history, or our needs. We are seeing right now in DC and soon to happen in Memphis with National Guard deployments and federal takeovers raising serious concerns. Deploying troops to patrol our streets rather than resources to uplift them only deepens the distrust and neglect that fuels both poverty and crime. The Constitution guarantees our right to assemble, to speak, to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. Those rights do not disappear when the federal troops arrive. We will hold every level of government accountable to these rights. We will demand investments in infrastructure, education, and economic upper mobility with the same urgency as we demand transparency and oversight. After I speak, you will hear directly from the leaders of our nation's most prominent civil rights and community organizations. We are here to sharpen our collective strategy and ensure we move forward with unity and purpose. That strategy must include a bold, unapologetic plan to dismantle concentrated poverty because thriving communities are safe communities. This conversation is also a reminder that we must know our rights, teach them to our neighbors, and be ready to assert them. But we must also fight for the right to thrive, to breathe clean air, to earn a dignified living, and to live in neighborhoods where hope is possible. With that, I will pass this back to Chief Whitehead to guide us in this important discussion. Peace and blessings to you all.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Chair Etsdale, and those opening remarks. I'll turn it over now, none other to our fearless leader here at the NAACP, President and CEO Derek Johnson. Before we dive into the important conversation this evening, we know a lot has happened over the last week. Since last week, and we want to set the tone there. And so, President Johnson, I'll kick the floor over to you, and then we'll dive into discussion with Phaedra and team.
Thank you, Dominic, Phaedra, Tyler, and everyone who organized this opportunity. You know, after the November elections, many of us was in shock. We knew it was going to be bad, but we didn't know what to expect. And for several of us, we began to monitor what the potential outcome would be. And on January 20th, we immediately began to see the reality of that election, a reality in which they deployed a strategy of shock and awe to throw many things against the wall to see what would stick. Executive orders that were both illegal and unconstitutional were issued. Many of those orders were challenged by our civil rights partners who are online today and many others in the social justice movement. But the goal was to distract and distort what democracy should look like, how democracy should be played out, and what roles and voices we should have as a people. And as a result of that, we began to recognize the shock and awe strategy was all about tax policy. They needed enough information to create chaos, to push through legislation, the most egregious piece of tax policy we've seen since before the New Deal shifting of the role of government in 1932. And much of this fight is about who gets taxed, who's not taxed, and what those tax dollars are spent on, plus regulatory authority that the government would have over industry. And so they would throw something on the wall over here to distract us over there so they can shift the definition of the role of government, redefine democracy as we know it, and redistribute wealth from the average everyday American to the super rich majority. And the tool of race and othering is an effective tool to use with that. It's such an effective tool that this nation has continued to use the tool of race to distract and distort messaging. And even this week, where I live in Mississippi, we seen yesterday two individuals who were found hanging from trees. An image that many of us know also well in the Black community. It is that collective consciousness of understanding that the terror that our communities have suffered through for decades or centuries is something that's symbolized by individuals hanging from trees, strange fruit. But also to recognize that when you have an individual who lived a life to terrorize others, to use his pulpit to talk about white supremacist ideology and to demean one's accomplishment, and unfortunately suffered a tragic death. And those who spoke out against the life he led, not the death he suffered, are now being targeted as if the concept of freedom of speech only applies to certain people at some times. And I was so encouraged this Sunday when I heard from pulpit to pulpit individuals within our community speaking out around the moral center of gravity in which the Christ that many of us celebrate, the religious beliefs that we have, center us in as others seek to distort the concept of Christianity and to demean others who pray and worship differently. And so I hope in this moment, as we begin to navigate and understand where we are as a nation, our obligation as a community, and our focus in this marathon of a fight. Now, let me be clear. Speaking out against something don't change the protesting against something without a strategy that's anchored to a long vision view won't shift the reality. Recognizing that 1960 tactics won't shift the reality in 2025. This is a true marathon. And so for the NAACP and our many, many, many partners, whether we partner with the Lawyers Committee and filing lawsuits in Texas or in Missouri, whether we're working with the National Council of Negro Women in California to organize voters for that ballot initiative, whether we are sitting down and strategizing around a collective table that's organized by Melanie Campbell, or however we decide to operate, this is an opportunity for us to look inwards. We don't have time for us versus us paradigm. It must be a us for us. None of us have all the answers, but all of us have a piece of an answer. And so this conversation is one of many where we can bring our pieces of the answers to the table and begin to think strategically how to move forward. I look forward to the conversation. I want to thank now the close to 2,500 people who've joined on the Zoom and the 2,000 plus who've joined on YouTube to engage in this critical conversation as one of many that we will be engaging in. Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you so much, President Johnson. We appreciate those words and just grounding us in where we are in this moment. And we know that we would not be the NAACP if we did not also have a call to action in this moment. And so with so many of you on the call, we know that we have an opportunity to fight back, and in that way, we can do that with our vote, right? And so I'm going to invite my colleague Tyler Sterling up to do a very quick call to action. That given that today is National Voter Registration Day.
Thank you very much, Phaedra. And just as well, good evening, everyone. My name is Tyler Sterling. I am the National Campaigns Director here at the NAACP. And just as President Johnson said, this is about strategy and the long-term game. And so one of the first options, and as Phaedra noted, we would be remiss if we did not use this opportunity to ensure that you take your first step in this protest and verifying your voter registration. We're saying verify because I assume everyone on this call is registered to vote. We want to make sure that you verify that, because registering to vote and the verification is that first step in your toolkit to make sure that we can actively protest and do this protest the right way in a strategic way. So I want you to think of your verification of your registration as your protest, your protection, and your power. We got a different set of PPPs there for you, but want you to make sure that you are verifying your voter registration here. And I assume everyone on this call is already registered to vote, but by verifying that, you are ensuring that the power is in your hands as laws are changing, as practices around the elections policy and administrations are changing. This is the first step that you can do to ensure that your power is protected, and that is verifying your registration to vote. So thank you very much, and I will kick it back to Phaedra as we transition into our panel discussions.
Thank you so much, Tyler. And as we begin to spotlight our panelists, we will report back out to you at the end of this call. The great thing about this tool is we can actually see in real time how many of you are verifying your registration, so we can report back to you. But in this process, we are going to invite up Mr. Keith Boykin, who is going to be our moderator for this conversation. And we will bring up our civil rights leaders as we have a roundtable to have this discussion. Keith, I'm turning the call over to you.
Thank you very much, Phaedra, and thank you all for joining us tonight. Good evening. I'm Keith Boykin, and our first panel tonight brings together leaders of civil rights organizations to share their perspectives on the current landscape, the challenges, and the opportunities. Now, President Johnson has just sort of laid out the framework for today, but before we begin in the conversation, I want to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Derek Johnson, the president and CEO of the NAACP. Our next panelist is the Reverend Siobhan Arline Bradley, the president and CEO of the National Council of Negro Women. Our next panelist is Melanie L. Campbell, the president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. Our next panelist is Damon T. Hewitt, the president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Our next panelist is the Reverend Al Sharpton, founder and president of the National Action Network. And our final panelist, last but not least, is Maya Wiley, the president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Welcome all, and thank you for joining us. This is a distinguished group. Now, as you can all see, we have 6 dynamic speakers, and at least 2 of them are preachers, but we only have 30 minutes for this panel, so I'm going to ask our speakers to be uncommonly brief. But I begin with the longest question of the day to set up the moment we're in, which President Johnson, you've already sort of done, but I just want to lay out the groundwork again. We now have armed federal troops, as you mentioned before, in 3 Black-led cities, LA, DC, and soon to be in Memphis. The Black mayor of Newark was just arrested this year. A Black member of Congress was indicted for protesting that arrest. And the president of the United States has threatened a war on the city of Chicago. And all this is happening while a Democratic elected official was assassinated this year, and the murder of a well-known white man by another white man has somehow prompted threats of retribution against Black people. And just today, the NAACP resurrected its famous Jim Crow era banner, "A man was lynched yesterday," to acknowledge the hanging death of Trey Reed in Mississippi. What's going on here, Derek? What does the NAACP's institutional memory teach us about this moment?
You know, one of the things that we recognized during the first Trump administration was the increase of racial hate crimes and the boldness that individuals will carry out their racial hatred. And so as we investigate the outcome of what took place at Delta State University, we keep in mind that we have a history in this country of othering, particularly when there's economic hardship. People are seeking someone to blame for their lack of you name it, resources, access to health care, the harms or the pain that they're feeling. And so we're concerned about what we witness is not something that Black folks run out to do and hang themselves from trees. That's not one of ways we carry out how we alleviate our issues. We are in ongoing conversation with the mother, aunt, and grandmother. We will support to the extent they need our support to try to get to the bottom of it. But traditionally, in this country, when you have individuals occupying elected office and they use the tool of othering, you find that there is a boldness or increase of racial hate violence. And this moment is no different.
So you say this moment is no different, but we've faced threats like this before, and the NAACP has been there for 116 years in dealing with these threats. What have we learned from those past experiences to help us or inform us as we move forward and try to deal with the current situation? Is there anything that is different about this that you mentioned before, for example, the strategies may not work. What is different about the threats for themselves that are taking place?
But I don't know if there's any difference. I think the biggest concept that we have to put our arms around is the fact there is no federal government to come in to address the lack of accountability and lawlessness that we are witnessing. When you have a trifecta, when you have a cultural shift, a political philosophy, strategy to demean and to discredit our identity as citizens, as human beings, in a way that we have seen accelerated over these short 9 months. The only equivalent to this is pre-1964, pre-1965. And so as we look at what were the structures in place, what were the tactics used, and how we push back, that's how we have to formalize our strategy. I spoke to some young people on Sunday and will speak to some more tomorrow who are anxious and ready to move. And I say, move cautiously but aggressively, because what we think would change the outcome will not. And for all those social media celebrities that talked about there would be no difference between voting for Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, I say there is a huge difference, as you can feel and see. And so oftentimes we take for granted our currency. In a democracy, our currency is our vote. And when we take that for granted, we get an outcome that deepens a hole that we were already trying to get out of. And now we have to figure out how to get out of this hole and hope and work to ensure there will be an election next year, because that's not even guaranteed in this current climate.
And I just want to remind people that we have elections this year as well. We have elections in Virginia and New Jersey for governor, election in New York City for mayor, an election here in California where I am for the redistricting proposal from the governor, Gavin Newsom. And there are other elections as well. But I want to turn to you, Melanie. I want to ask you a question about what's going on as well, because of the work that you do. Your coalition work spans multiple organizations. What do you see as effective coordination strategies that we could engage in right now to face the threats that would be more comprehensive than just sort of doing piecemeal approaches?
Well, thank you, Keith, and thank you, Derek. And it's always good to be in community. And I love the fact that this is a community conversation. I think what has worked has been, of course, those organizations that have been around, like some of us here, but also partnering up and bringing in coalition opportunities with folks that are new, right? New to either building organizations or even focusing in on utilizing different kinds of tools that are out there. I think what's challenging is, in this moment, quite frankly, is when I think about historically when we've been in what I call a backlash of progress, first Reconstruction, second Reconstruction. Someone corrected me and said they felt like we had a third Reconstruction, it just lasted very briefly, and that was the Black Lives Matter movement. And the backlash from that was very swift. And Siobhan and I were in that conversation the other day in Alabama. So just being able to understand that we're in this backlash moment, that we're really, what I see as different is that the whole systems, Garrett was very on point about we can't go to the federal government. But you also have the systems, not just the governmental systems, but our culture under attack, our First Amendment rights under attack. So many elements of what this society, as flawed as the democracy was and is, so many elements, really the pushback on education. So I think for me, it's also trying to develop the time and the ability to think about what coalition ought to look like in this moment, and building upon what has worked in the past, which is building coalition. I'm a coalition. You got Leadership Conference Coalition. We've got National Council of Negro Coalition. We've got the Council of Divine Nine. We have coalitions. Labor, AFL-CIO. You know, so we have all these coalitions. Movement for Black Lives. How we can collectively build that, but also figure out how to utilize how people, what you do, Keith, when I see you, we putting the word out in unique ways. I think we have to figure out how to develop, and I'm not saying I have the answer tonight. I'm being real and transparent.
That's
We've got
okay.
to figure out together, those of us who are in position, but those who don't have titles can help us think through how we deal with this backlash that we're going through, so we can get to that, some say, fourth Reconstruction.
Well, now, Reverend Arlene Bradley, I see you shaking your head over there. And you're the head of the National Council of Negro Women. 300,000 Black women have lost their jobs this year. And what is based on your experience, your work with NCNW, and your deep roots in community organizing, going back to Mary McLeod Bethune, what does effective grassroots organizing look like today when people are actually even too afraid to speak up or stand or say anything? And there was a lot of fear about just being engaged in traditional democratic channels because they're being undermined.
Yeah, and I'm so glad to be here with my NAACP family tonight, and to our colleagues. And Keith, thank you for the question, because a lot of folks are missing that this is about what we call direct service and direct action. In this moment in time, there are basic needs that are not even being met. So before we even talk about the organizing, we've got to talk about, with 300,000 Black women not working, we have to think about ways to re-engage economic development in some of those households. Before somebody can think about their political survival, they have to think about their homes, their families. And so part of our movement work is ensuring that we're meeting needs first, and then creating those actual overall coalitions to help push systems. One thing that I realize is all of our organizations do different things. We do them all very, very well. The beauty of Black coalition building is that Black coalitions that are in alignment know we have to get on the ground with Black women. We know we serve moms, we serve families. We know we're feeding families. We know that we're helping people to find jobs. But we also know we have a heavy hill strategy. We have advocates that can go on the ground and activate. And I'll talk about this in our next question, but what is coming up for us with this National Voter Registration Day is, how do we re-engage on a full toolkit to understand what's the map, right? Old school organizing says, what's the goal? The goal is keep freedom and fascism, and identify a Black groundswell of coalition activists identifying needs and system changes that we can do together. And that's where NCNW is focusing. We'll be 90 years old this year. And think about when Bethune founded the organization in the middle of a depression. We've seen this movie before, but it's had different actors and different plots. We got to address those.
Thank you for that. Damon, I want to ask you a question. Texas and Missouri Republicans this year have voted to eliminate Black congressional districts in those states. We're also seeing attacks on redistricting in other places, voting access and local governance. Are these coordinated legal challenges, and how do we use our limited legal resources across multiple fronts? I know the NAACP is suing everybody this year, but what's your suggestion for how we do that?
Well, look, Keith, thanks for the question, and thanks to NAACP and President Johnson and his amazing team and all the membership throughout the nation, which powers Black America to be our best selves. These are without a doubt coordinated attacks. We start seeing these things all of a sudden. All of a sudden, you need new forms of voter ID. All of a sudden, they're changing certification rules. All of a sudden, they're trying to do redistricting. These people use a common playbook, and they go from county to county, state to state, doing the same thing. And so you just got to ask yourself why. Why they keep changing the rules? Why they make it harder to vote? Why they challenging mail-in ballots? Why did they storm the Capitol on January 6th? This stuff is all coordinated, right? And so what we have to do is partner and work together. You cannot have a constellation of stars in the sky with only one star. You need multiple. For people who love hip hop, you can't have hip hop without having the b-boy, the MC, the DJ, and whatnot. So we have to all come together doing what we do. That's why I'm proud that my organization, the Lawyers Committee, partners so much and so well, taking our lead from the NAACP, proud to represent them in the Texas litigation, where that is a state, just like Georgia and other states that are at war with their own people, Black people primarily, but other people as well, just to preserve political power. We call the thing exactly what it is. And in Texas, we can trace it. They were told by the White House, attack districts where Black and brown people have opportunity. That's how you get your partisan advantage. So we have this partisan and racist racial gerrymandering as twin evils happening at the same time. And we're going back to court with the Texas NAACP on October 1st to challenge it once again.
And Maya, you represent the Leadership Conference for Civil Rights, and you represent the broadest coalition in the movement. And so I want to sort of ask you the same question I asked to Damon in terms of whether you see this as a coordinated strategy, but also I want to ask you whether all these different groups are working together now and how effectively that is. How effectively are they working together?
Well, thank you so much, Keith, and thank you for your voice. I just want to echo that. And I also want to appreciate Tyler and Phaedra and Dominic. We know you have a fantastic president and President Johnson, but the NAACP has a whole team. Let me just say this, and being so grateful to be in this group of sister leaders and brother leaders. The Leadership Conference itself on civil and human rights is the nation's oldest and largest, is born of the Black liberation struggle.
Amen.
And I say that because when you think about the size of our coalition now, which is roughly 250 national organizations, and I would say, and we say all the time, we are a majority of the country, we look like the majority, but we come out of the Black liberation struggle. That is very clear. One of the reasons why so many organizations want to join the Leadership Conference is because we come out of the Black liberation struggle. Our history, our legacy, our leadership in paving the way for civil rights, including the strategies to win them and the necessity of focusing on citizenship. I'm saying that with intention, citizenship. You know, when you think about every fight we fought, collectively as a Black movement, as the second Reconstruction, and as we're facing the need for a third Reconstruction, one of the things that's clear is we were saying centrally, we are here, we belong here, and we deserve every right and power that indicates that we should be here. So is it a concerted effort to take that from us? Hell yeah. In fact, you know, they gave us the blueprint, Project 2025. They wrote it down. They were so emboldened, they put their playbook on paper. And the only thing that was new is that they put their playbook on paper. It wasn't even really a new playbook. It was built over a long period of time because to come for our power and what they built, they also had to vilify us. And if you look at what's happening, and many others have already said this, President Johnson has said it, the point is they're using racism to say crime,
Right.
using crime to say militarizing law enforcement, creating checkpoints, and they're using all of those to then say they can come for our voting rights. They can come for all our sources of power. And that's why when you set all this up, Keith, around where they're doing it and to whom they're doing it, which elected leaders, and how they're now taking all the levers of government and weaponizing them against us. It is a concerted, planned effort, and it's on paper. So we know it's a plan because it's sitting there in writing. And the only thing that we have to recognize, I think that everyone here on this Zoom is saying, is that the way we got out of white supremacy we didn't completely get out of it, but we made significant strides, was because there was a playbook that we had as a people. And that what has been happening is that I think there is a great demand and hunger for the playbook that comes from the people who always knew how to write the original playbook. And fundamentally understanding that it is still about our citizenship. It is still about our rights. It is still about the fact that they're using us to take away everybody's rights. And until we start with ourselves, we won't pave the way for others, but that everyone else will follow when we lead.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for that, Maya. I appreciate it. And now, Reverend Sharpton, you have been on the front lines for decades, from the protests in the streets to the boardrooms to the studios on national television to the churches to the community. You've seen it all from various different vantage points. So I really want to pick your brain here for a moment and ask you, what strategies do you think work best to translate all this protest energy that we've had in the past into something more concrete that feels like real policy change? I think you're on mute, Reverend Sharpton. Still on mute. Okay. There should be a blue button that says mute. If you click on your image, it should show up, and you can click on that. I was just giving you credit for being so tech savvy and on TV, and now we lost you. Okay, I'm going to come back to you, Reverend Sharpton, as soon as you reappear in a moment. But I guess the larger question I was getting at here, what I was asking for Reverend Sharpton, is that something that Derek Johnson was saying at the beginning: the strategies of the 60s aren't working anymore. What are the strategies that we use in 2025 to move forward, using the various skills that we have? And Reverend Sharpton is now back. So Reverend Sharpton.
Yeah, let me say, first of all, thank you, Keith, and thanks to President Johnson and his team for convening us. I think that one of the things that I would hasten to add to what I've heard so far is that our collective work is what is important. I think Maya and President Johnson referred to the 60s. I was a kid in the 60s. When I joined the movement in the 70s, there was always different ways that we did things. There was never one way. We had Dr. King and Roy Wilkins and Whitney Young and Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer and Malcolm X all at the same time. And I think that if we not choose just our lane, but have our lanes complement each other on the same highway, we get things done. Roy Wilkins didn't do what Dr. King did. Dr. King didn't do what Whitney did. And Fannie Lou didn't do what none of them did. Ella Baker did. And I think it is the importance at this hour that the civil rights organizations do what they do in concert, but not in necessarily copying. Some of us do direct action and marching and protest. Some of us do the legal strategy. Some of us do the economic strategy, or some umbrella it all. And I think that's what we need. If we get into just one way, I think they will cut us off. What did they do? They built the MAGA movement where they took everything from media to dealing with social media, to dealing with legal strategy, to dealing with politics, to dealing with organizing on campuses. So we don't need to be one-dimensional, and we don't need to be one-generational. I started at 12 years old. I'm much older now. We've got young people in all of our organizations. But don't forget, they a 30-something-year-old Stephen Miller and them put a 79-year-old man in the White House named Donald Trump. They don't have a problem dealing intergenerational or with different strategies. Bannon does something different than all of them. So I think we need to all perfect what we do and make sure it complements the whole. As far as National Action Network is concerned, we've always been a direct action organization. Just 2 weeks ago, we brought thousands down to Wall Street. What are marches for? Marches are not to solve a problem, it's to expose a problem. but you cannot mobilize people without exposing it. Let's not forget, one of the impetus of the 1963 March on Washington was the killing of Medgar Evers. If Medgar Evers had not been killed in June, they don't know if they'd have had the numbers they had. Right after the March on Washington, 2 months later, was the bombing in the Birmingham church, 4 girls, which led organizing around these kinds of crises rather than let them try to interpret it or our saying we're not going to react. Mobilizing around them are instruments to really energize our community with outrage. And I think that we proved that when Trump was president before. The thing that amazes me, Keith, is we act like Trump is not beatable. We beat Trump in 2020, the year of George Floyd, the year of Breonna Taylor, the year of Ahmaud Arbery. Some of us was in the streets. Some of us were doing legal work. Some were doing voter registration. And that November, he was defeated. And the same thing can happen in terms of the midterm elections, in terms of the battles in the court, in terms of what goes down in 28. So I think that we should I don't think we should repeat the 60s, but we should learn from them. And I think that if everybody perfects what it is they do, this is what's called for. When you have a blatant guy killed, fine. We all denounce the violence. We all denounce political violence. But now they're going to have flags at half mast and make a national hero out of him and dismiss what he has said and stood for. One is separate from the other. And I think that we can learn from them, that they learn how to come around and circle the wagons, and race is the way they can always feed their people, tell their people that it's them more than us, and it's not true. We've got to energize our base, including our white allies, and we've got to give people the freedom to do what they do best, as long as it's part of a collective strategy.
I want to follow up on that, Reverend Sharpton. It's not necessarily a question for you, but for anyone in the panel. You mentioned the importance of mobilizing based on crises, and you talked about the examples in 1963 with Medgar Evers and the bombing of the church in Birmingham. And we've had so many crises this year in 2025. Have we been effectively mobilizing around those crises, especially considering, this is the larger part of the question, there has been a counter movement, I think, at least in the Black community, some people who don't think that we should be mobilizing, they don't think that we should be engaged because they think it's either not our struggle or they think it's a setup for Trump to declare martial law. How do we fight against that and use these crises as mobilizing opportunities? And that's a question for you, Reverend Sharp, and anyone else.
So I'll jump in there. I think it's really important to recognize the climate that we're in as opposed to the climate that used to be. And to recognize the climate we're in is to be cautious and study what are the tools we have at our disposal to actually inflict some harm. It is easy to destroy a system because you don't care about the wreckage. It's much more difficult to protect and build a system. And so they can go in and they can destroy everything. The rule of law means nothing to them. The constitutional guardrails are an annoyance to them. The acts of civility is something that they are allergic to. The very fact that power is their destination and we or anything else is between them getting power, mean they are willing to destroy it. And so if we know that that's the climate we're in, reacting to the individual incidents will only exhaust us or deplete our resources or dispirit our ability to really zero in on what powers we do have and how do we take them off kilter. Correct, we did defeat Trump in 2000. And I think if given the opportunity now, he would be defeated today because many people were under an illusion that somehow things were so bad compared to how things actually are. Now, one of the things I want to commend you on, Keith, is how you've been able to navigate the space and to explain on social media platforms in 3 minutes or less exactly what they're doing and what's at stake.
Mm-hmm.
We are in an information crisis right now. The platforms that we communicate through are super spreaders of hate and mis and disinformation. Broadcast and cable television has diminished to the point where combined fewer people are watching it compared to the social media platforms, and individuals of us with a followers can really influence outcomes. Now the real question is, how do we use these new tools and understand what the current climate is? And the current climate is about power, domination, and controls, not the rule of law, not civility, and not the way things used to be, and really navigate into a space to realize, how do we attack back? It's more of them than us. Organized people trump organized money every day, but we have to recognize that we're organized. And final point is also appreciate what we see as a solution, they see as a problem. And what they see as a problem is what we see as a solution. So there's no fairness in that process. It's only the race towards maintaining power, domination, control, or making sure the people get the power necessary to go back to a level of normalcy that would allow and equip us to advance the quality of our lives.
Reverend Arlene Bradley, you
Yeah.
want to say?
Yeah, can I jump in here? I think, and I'm looking at the chat as well, because a lot of folks are saying we're struggling with the concreteness of the work, right? And so one of the things that NCNW tried to do was put this work in buckets. So we call it a 3C strategy. One was our really consumer strategy, right? As consumers, literally underground identifying where we're going to consume, where we're going to activate our economic base. Then it was a constituent strategy. We have a toolkit that's going to be made available to all of our supporters and members that walks through every seat and every state that has an election in 25 and 26 to identify who is up for re-election and how to be able to understand their voting record. Why is that important? We are modeling the work of ground leaders that are not really clear on who the electorate is, right? They're not necessarily clear on what candidates are in place. Some of this is not going to take place on social media. Like I want to help people understand that. Some of these things that we're doing, we're not publicizing because one, this can't all be televised for everyone to see. Some of this is about us pushing it actively on the ground. The last one is the commitment strategy. We've been asking Black communities across the country, redefine your dollars, redefine your dialogue, and redefine the way that you invest. Do you invest in Black organizations? Do you invest in Black schools? Are you investing in ensuring that we have freedom schools and spaces where we can teach Black children? We've not talked about it, but part of our history challenge is why we are losing so many battles. There's an attempt to erase history. All of this is connected. So concretely, we had to hone in on where we had strengths. We have strength in numbers to mobilize on the ground. We have strength in numbers to give education, to help our electorate know who's running, why it affects them, and quite frankly, those kitchen table issues. Nobody's talking about that, but we have to be clear that it's going to take more strategies across the board for us to deliver.
Well, let me transition now to a question to Melanie, and also to you, Maya, because you run for office recently. Melanie, voter engagement is really crucial, but there are a lot of community members who don't feel like their votes really matter, especially when you can have federal forces who can just override local leadership. So how do we maintain civic engagement while our democratic institutions are literally under attack?
Well, thank you for the question. I think part of it too is that one of the things in this moment, and a lot of us talk about this, a lot of folks say this, is we also have to have the courage to fight against uncertainty. One of the things that because I live in the DC area, that's been really exciting to me is the free DC, right? Folks showing up when you're not sure what's going to happen to you. Showing up when you know DC, of course, is very different than many, many other places because it's not a state, right? But one of the things that's critical is the power of the people. That will never change. And so that the idea that we still stand up and fight back is critical. The other is being able to say, it's not that the democracy, we want to go back to it. It's also a new opportunity. Some of the conversations that we've been in are off camera, quite frankly, as Siobhan talked about, is really thinking about, well, what do we want this to look like? In this moment where everything is being dismantled, we also have to take the time to imagine what is it we want to see happen, so that when we're fighting and when this next election, I'm gonna tell you, one of the things, if we don't demand that there's something different that happens with that US Supreme Court, whoever is elected the next president, to me, that would be a criminal act on our half. So we're going to have to make different kinds of demands in our 2026, 2028 project. We have to define what that looks like. So I think for me, and the conversations and the strategies I've been in, helping organize or being part of, that's a lot of what I'm hearing, especially from younger people. Like, well, that wasn't really working. There were so many things that weren't working. What are we going to do different this time? So we have to also find ways to develop our blueprint for the future. And I think that's very, very critical. And that is part of what will get us to show up. It cannot be because we just got to fight back against Donald Trump or J.D. Vance, who wants to be like Donald Trump. We have to give people something to fight for that looks like something that takes us to a better place as a community.
And I'm glad you mentioned, about the young people involved. We're going to have another panel that follows this, which has an intergenerational group of people, including college students. But I just want to ask you a quick follow-up question. I want to turn it over to Maya, and then I want to end the panel with a question for everyone. The follow-up question to you, Melanie, is when you talk about changing the Supreme Court, what exactly are you saying?
Well, it could be term limits. It could be expanding that court. But our children's future is at risk when the way this makeup is. Those six people are able to help destroy a nation, and that's what's happening. And so, in the prior to this last administration, under Biden-Harris administration, there was starting to be some real conversation. Too late. Right, but the reality is, the system cannot stand if you now have a Supreme Court that does not support the Constitution. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm an organizer.
Are you saying? Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to be clear before we move on. Are you saying expand the court?
Expand the court.
Okay.
Do what is needed, or term limits, or both. Lord, Mr. McCall can slap me if I'm off base, but that's what I'm hearing. Like, more people understand that that because of all of this happening, that the Supreme Court is rubber stamping so many things that are going to put us back. And so, to me, that's going to be something that needs to be on the top of the list when we talk about justice. We can't get justice if you have a rogue Supreme Court.
All right, Maya, I just wanted to ask you a question too, because I didn't have a chance to do this before. When you were talking about your role at the leadership conference, you don't just represent issues that deal with African American civil rights. You also deal with LGBTQ rights, reproductive rights for women, immigrant rights, and other causes. How are all these issues related? And are we working effectively with our coalition partners?
Well, first of all, I just want to point out, Black people are LGBTQ.
Yes.
Black people are people with disabilities. Black people are immigrants. Black people are in labor unions. So every constituency that we're talking about also includes Black people, just as we have different sectors, and the way in which they come for us is very anti-Black. But also very explicitly anti-trans, very sexist. But this is the point about coalition building, and I think the opportunity in these very challenging times, right? Because anti-Blackness is so clear, but also because they're coming for the power centers. President Johnson made this point clearly, is they're coming for our power, and the way they're coming for our power is trying to divide us and to convince us that we have somehow different fights or different interests. The reality is, and I'll just use voting rights as one example, is they can't win unless they cheat and steal. But that's where the power is in winning, so that they're cheating and stealing. There is a very clear pattern of who they're coming for and how they're coming to steal it that everybody has an interest in. And that's using racism. They're using it for mass deportations. They're using it in the crime narrative. They're using it in the ways to attack not-for-profit organizations and try to prevent us from lawful and even oversight for elected officials. The through point there does become power to do the things that we see across the coalition a hunger to do. That means organizing ourselves around the power they're trying to take and the way we have to work together to say, no, you can't. So when we talk about the tools, Siobhan, dropped a mic on some of the strategies that are so necessary. And I think Reverend Sharpton is right. It's not it doesn't have to be we all have different roles to play, but it does have to connect back up to fighting about power and to be able to be explicit about who they're coming after and why, so that we are working together across coalition. And there is a lot more opportunity to do that. And it's critical that we do it together.
Thank you. And thank you for the point about intersectionality too. I think we are at the end of our time, but I haven't been told that we're at the end of the time. So I'm going to ask two more questions for the group until somebody tells me otherwise. The first question for everyone to answer, whoever wants to answer, is what do we need to do now to start preparing for the 2025 midterm elections? Start with you, Reverend.
You mean 2026?
2026, I'm sorry, 2026 midterm elections, yes. Reverend Sharp.
I think we need to be very, very clear about battling the redistricting moves that they're doing around the country, from starting in Texas and now they're going to Missouri, all over the country. And we need to mobilize around making sure we put the right efforts on the ground to counter what they're doing, both legally, both in the streets, both in the churches. Again, I understand people saying what was done in the 60s can't be done now. And I think that a lot of us need to study the 60s. That's where we got the 64 Voting Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act, 64 Civil Rights Act. We had SNCC then that were the young people. Yes, there are new ways of communicating today. And many of us are using it. I do TV, but I got 2 million followers on Instagram that many of my colleagues that are young activist groups don't even have that. We've got to be versatile and we've got to be united. And we can't throw out anything that is workable and achievable because, again, we are in a situation that they don't use one strategy, one way. We cannot afford to act as though we can't be multifaceted and put numbers on the board. So in terms of the midterm elections, we need to be organizing now in those areas to make sure we sustain the districts that we have. I was in Houston Sunday, and to really deal with the fact those state legislators are going to carve this up, we've got to be able to support those in the state legislators that are with us. And when I say us, I'm talking about supporting democracy, black and white. And we need to also be using the courts and support what Maya is doing in the courts and what Lawyers Committee and what LDF is doing. And we need to be in the streets. I mean, part of the reason I did the march on Wall Street is people were calling every day saying, why ain't we out there? You had No King's March, you had marches against Tesla. People in our community felt we were not fighting back. So don't underestimate the visual because people will not hear us if they think that we have become dormant.
And Siobhan,
Yeah, I want to add to that. So I talked earlier a little bit about targeting our efforts. I do want to talk about our really youth work. That's really going to be important right now. As we prepare for 2020, I'm going to say 25 and 26 because New Jersey, Virginia, but there's also some key mayoral races, Prop 50 in California. Some of this is about identifying our rising 18-year-olds that are going to be a new voting bloc that we are not talking about clearly and concisely about how we engage. NCNW likes to tout this. We're the home of the 92%. Black women mobilization is key across the board. The other work that we really have to think about is how we're supporting our civil rights organizations that are actually on the ground with these redistricting efforts. Now, what does that look like for you as a voter? You making calls to your state legislature right now is a part of that 2025-26 strategy. I don't think that we're giving folks the understanding of their power in this moment. Many of your state legislatures are going to actually reconvene in the beginning of the year. It is your job to really break down the doors and say, this is what we want. California, you're on the stage. You literally as a state are on the stage as an example of what true coalition organizing is. The last thing I'll say is for 2026, please understand, Derek said something that's profound earlier. We cannot take for granted that elections are going to be fair and clear as they normally have been. We have a regime of leadership that is like no other. So sometimes you got to fight fire with fire. So to all the faith leaders that are concerned about morality in this conversation, we're going to fight fire with fire and have righteous rage on the work. And I think that you, as voters that are listening, you have an opportunity not just to pick up your phone, go to your districts, talk to them directly to say, we will vote you out if you do not comply with what the people are requesting. That's how you prepare for 2025 and 26.
So
If
let
it's
me-
okay, quickly,
before,
I'd like to.
before
Okay.
you speak, Melanie, I've been told now it's 9 o'clock Eastern time. So
Okay.
we're gonna have to wrap it up with this question. So anybody who hasn't spoken, you get a chance to speak, and then I'll end up with you, President Johnson, as the last speaker. So Melanie, you're first.
Okay, quickly, we have to combine the organizing around the election, but we also, which has been said, we have to provide mutual aid. You know, a lot of us, NAACP, Derek, you know, a lot of us were part of the State of People Power Tour, you know, as an example of what has to happen because people are going through so much. And so we have to address that in our community. We have to be there for our people because it's really a lot of things are hemorrhaging in our community. So we have to do both. You can't just say, hey, it's just go vote and it'll get better when people can't feed, when people are losing Medicare, Medicaid, so many other government programs that are being rolled back, our students on these HBCU campuses. So we have to find a way to do both of those things as a part of the strategy for 25 and 2026.
I'll just add, Keith, look, liberation is a participatory endeavor. We can't just have a gaze and look for an Obama or look for Harris or look for anybody to get us free or look to the leaders on this call. We have to exercise that muscle. Otherwise, we will not be able to go from 0 to 60 come election time. The real work happens in between. I put in the chat for everyone to see the election protection hotline, 866 our vote. If you have questions, if you see something that looks funny, as people have, call that hotline. You're going to get connected to real people, real lawyers who are going to work with grassroots partners on the ground, hundreds of organizations, many of you, including NAACP branches and state conferences, to take action before the election actually happens.
And anyone else hasn't spoken? All right, President Johnson.
So just to close out, as we focus on 2026, organize and start today. I am elated that over 2,600 people stayed on this entire time. And you represent over 40 plus states across the country. You are the community leaders. You are the voices. You are who we are looking for. Secondly, the California initiative is absolutely critical. African Americans have always over-indexed in voter turnout in California. We've already carried more than our weight with less than 7% of the state's total population. We are over-indexed in terms of getting people elected both statewide and in local districts. And so for this election, all of us who have feet on the ground in California, family on the ground in California, and the ability to reach into California is going to be absolutely critical that we get people to engage in that ballot initiative. And for those of us who are C4, we can take a clear position because as a C4, you can say vote for or against an initiative. Thirdly, the Utah Supreme Court today made a critical decision in allowing the special commission to move forward with drawing districts for the state of Utah, which will probably result in Salt Lake City being able to elect the candidate of their choice, which kinds to break down some of the complete red state delegation that comes out of there. We are not partisan, but we are political and we are clear and understand that political parties are vehicles for agendas. And right now, the vehicle that we must ride in is the vehicle who can see us, who can hear us, and respect our human essence. Another vehicle, they decide that we're not even human, more or less citizens. And then I will also recognize the fact that 27 congressional members have decided they're not running for re-election. 27. Majority, 2/3 of them are individuals who vote against our interests. And that's on top of what happens ultimately in the Texas Supreme Court, the Texas litigation, what happens coming out of Louisiana. We're going to see what takes place in Missouri as Kansas begin to line up. All of these things is a four-dimensional chess game with 50 parts called states. And so right now is our opportunity to begin to organize to see where can we have influence. And we cannot discount as 13% of this nation's population, the oversized influence through culture we have on how people function, how they see the ability to win. President Obama did not have majority of the white vote when he won. President Biden did not have majority of the white vote and he won. We are the majority and we need to recognize that we are the majority, organize accordingly because we can and will have an impact. And final point, we have to fight to ensure we have an election next year. There are designs and goals to prevent that from happening. Some of the work that the lawyers committees and other legal operations are doing to ensure that we have election protections at the poll. We have to get more poll workers. We have to guard against those who are intimidating poll workers so we can protect the sanctity of our election process. And the only way we can do that are the leaders who are on this call to ensure poll workers work the polls on election day come November 2026. We are the majority. We are the victors. We can, will. We just have to know it, say it, speak it out loud at every chance we get.
Thank you very much, President Johnson. That's Derek Johnson, NAACP President, Reverend Siobhan Arline Bradley from the National Council of Negro Women, Melanie L. Campbell from the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, Damon T. Hewitt from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, the Reverend Al Sharpton, the founder and president of the National Action Network, and Maya Wiley, the president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Thank you all for an amazing panel. But wait, there's more. Stay tuned. Phaedra is going to introduce our next panel in just a moment. So stay on the call, and thanks everyone for participating.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again to all of our leaders. And as we transition panels, I invite you all to stay for this really important conversation. I saw in the chat, a lot of you were talking about needing to understand, how are we dealing with our youth and how are we supporting our HBCUs? And there's a real concern about how we're dealing with this at the municipal level as, the National Guard moves into cities like Memphis, and they're in DC here right now. So we are going to transition into a panel that really focuses on bridging that conversation, and we will have elected officials, we will have student leaders on HBCU campuses, we will have leaders who are doing work right now on the ground as NAACP leaders. So I'm going to invite this panel back up and for them to come off on camera, and Keith will facilitate this conversation. Please stay tuned and let's hear from this amazing group of leaders.
Thank you very much, Phaedra. And we're back. And thanks everyone for participating. Thank you for our new panel. I want to introduce our panelists. This session features a dynamic conversation among elected officials, law enforcement activists. We're going to explore how different sectors can actually work together to strengthen trust, safety, and opportunity within our communities. And we begin with Carmel Henry, the DC branch president of the NAACP, Kyla Holder, a student at Alabama State University and Alabama State University NAACP chapter. The Honorable Van R. Johnson, the second president of the African American Mayors Association and the mayor of the city of Savannah, Georgia. Deirdre Malone, a Memphis branch first vice president of the NAACP, and Devin Nobles, a student at the Florida A&M University and a member of the Florida A&M University chapter of the NAACP. So thank you all for joining us. I want to begin with you, President Henry. Washington, D.C. has been the forefront of a lot of crises this year. Mayor Muriel Bowser is there, and she's engaged in these fights with the president. But D.C. has been taken over essentially effectively by the administration. How has this affected the relationship between community members and local institutions? And what are you seeing in terms of trust and safety concerns?
Oh, thank you. So I think when you think about DC, we definitely are, the federal government has taken over the district, and they've instilled fear throughout the district. People are losing their jobs. People are afraid to report crimes. People are afraid to go on the street. The National Guard, no one should have to deal with the National Guard taking the metro to work or dealing with the metro on their commute, the morning commute. You have people with semi-automatic rifles on the train with our 5-year-olds heading to school. So I think as we continue this, It's really disrupting the relationship that the community has tried to build with MPD. It's disrupted the relationship that the community has tried to build with our local government officials. But I think as we continue to work together, hopefully we can find a solution.
And thank you for that. And Mayor Johnson, what role do elected officials play in this? Because the elected officials are being big-footed, if you will, by the federal government. How can elected officials, particularly African-American, Black elected officials, protect their constituents in this time of crisis?
Well, first of all, thank you, Brother Keith, and to all the wonderful panelists. I'm here as the president of the African American Mayors Association, and I'm a subscribing diamond member of the NAACP. Membership has its privileges. I think it's important that local elected officials, particularly mayors, we serve as the first line of defense for our residents when state and federal authorities overstep, and we have watched this in real time. We are the closest to the people. We know the realities of our communities. We're accountable to our neighbors every day. They roll up on us in the store, in churches, no matter where we are, they come to our houses. When higher levels of government pursue policies that threaten our residents' rights, limit our opportunities, or undermine our ability, it is our duty to stand firm and protect those we serve. And we've been watching this in real time. We've been watching the courageous actions of our sister mayor, Muriel Bowser in DC. We've been watching the courageous actions of Mayor Eric Adams, Mayor Brandon Johnson, Mayor Brandon Scott, and now Mayor Paul Young, because they are coming for us in ways that we have never seen before. And the reality is, when you look, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see exactly who they are coming for. And although some of these cities under the notion that crime is bad in these cities, no, there are other cities being led by other folks who have much worse crime members than we do. So we're not falling for the okie doke on this one.
Thank you. And Vice President Malone, you're in Memphis.
I am.
You're also you're in the heart of the next target. I watched President Trump in the Oval Office a few days ago sign a presidential memorandum authorizing National Guard troops to go to your city. And it struck me when I watched that everyone in the Oval Office surrounding the president, of all those people, none of them were Black. And yet Memphis is a majority Black city, the largest Black city in America with 63% Black population. What does this mean to have a predominantly white federal government taking over the law enforcement responsibilities in a majority Black city? And how is your city responding to that?
So quite frankly, Keith, thank you for this conversation. We're appalled, we're disgusted. The local NBC affiliate did a poll today asking our community, what do they think about the National Guard coming to Memphis? 23% of the voters said yes, but 77% overwhelmingly said that we don't want the National Guard to come to Memphis. Memphis Mayor Paul Young has publicly stated he did not request them to come, especially since the last 21 months here in Memphis, crime has gone down. Some of the stats that Chief C.J. Davis, who's an amazing police chief, has shared with me is that in the last 21 months, the city's recent partnership with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office has produced over 240 arrests, 55 gang members off the streets, and 98 federal indictments. We're putting in the work. The city has completely said they're putting in the work. We just need additional resources, but we do not need the National Guard here.
And can I ask you a follow-up on that? Because you mentioned 21 months, and I think that's important because the Trump administration keeps using the term 8 months. All this just happened since January. And how do you respond to that narrative? Because they're very effective in communicating to people that crime is only going down in Memphis because they showed up, which obviously is not true. But how do we effectively respond to that?
Because it's just absolutely not true. But we also know that this current president is known for not telling the truth. So that's the reason you have to go to the source, right? And the source is going to be data-driven, looking at what's being produced here on the ground here in Memphis. But let's also talk about the state legislature, Keith, because If they're serious about reducing crime, then why did the state legislature make the state of Tennessee a permitless state, that anybody can carry a gun in Tennessee? You don't have to have a permit. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouths, quite frankly.
Thank you. Now, Devin, I noticed you're shaking your head. You want to say something? Or
I just,
I could ask
yeah,
you a
I'm just
question.
very much agreement. Yeah, they're speaking about speaking a lot of truth. So I'm just in agreement. Yes, sir.
So tell me, from your perspective as a youth activist, what do you need most from institutions like the NAACP, or local government and community elders? How can they help to sustain the work that you're doing?
Yes, sir. I live off the principle that we have three currencies in life, and that's time, energy, and money. I have an abundance of time and energy, not a lot of money. And so what, a lot of times that we need some of the things are resources, not just US dollars, but podiums or printers and whatnot. Whatever resources we have, we need a little bit of help with that. Secondly, I think that with that time and energy, we don't have a lot of experience. I'm very willing and able to get out industries, do canvassing and whatnot, but to enact strategies is not my forte. I don't have the wisdom and experience of Reverend Al Sharpton. So to instill that and kind of point us towards, or we know the goal, but how to get there is a little bit blurry for us. And so I think that, offering up their resources and experience and wisdom, specifically wisdom to our youth, we really will be able to start to have a much larger impact and bring about that impact in a much more efficient manner.
Thank you for that. And Kyla, you're in Alabama, but you're not too far from Mississippi. And we just saw yesterday that Trey Reed was found hanging from a tree on campus there at Delta State University. What has the reaction been for student leaders and community members where you are, and how are students responding to that, engaged with that issue?
The only word I can say to that is outrage. It's pure outrage. When you turn around and you think about the state of Mississippi and you think about the Emmett Till story and you think about what has happened to Trey Reed, the only thing you can think of is outrage. Outrage from not just the community in Mississippi, the community of Delta State University, but also the community from minorities. I know with me on social media, when I first heard of the story, I was very shocked. This is not something that you expect to wake up to as a person that uses social media a lot, especially a person generation. And this is the type of stuff that our parents as minorities, they have to worry about with us.
So the question for you, Kyla and Devin, how can we support, we meaning people who are not in college or older, how can we support the work that you're doing, though, in terms of, and Devin mentioned money, for example, but what other resources can we bring to help the fight on your campus and other places?
I would say more action. Let's talking more action. People can talk all day long about what we can do or what we can wish to do, but nothing really happens if we just talk. We have to put in more action, just like we did put in the work back in 2008 when I was only 3 years old, to allow our first African-American president to take the seat in the White House. It was action then, so we still need the same type of action today, because without the action, we're going to continue to become this place that has now been ranked as one of the least peaceful countries to live in.
So let's drill down on that just a moment, just to follow up on this question, because you talk about action, and we now see that after Charlie Kirk was killed in Utah by a white man, that a number of HBCUs were targeted with threats that caused the campus to be shut down, including Alabama State University. You're a student there, and you're one of the first schools that received those threats. What was that like for you and your classmates, and how did you respond emotionally to that threat that happened at that time?
As a student that was one of the HBCUs to receive a terroristic threat, specifically on 9/11, the first thing that came to mind was just pure shock, because nobody wakes up and expects to see a message from the school telling you that we have been shut down or closed for the remainder of the day due to a terroristic threat that's being sent. And with me personally, it's crazy because that class that I had that day was actually Homeland Security. And for the ones who do not know, the Department of Homeland Security was actually created in response to the 9/11 attacks back in 2001. So I was getting dressed for this class, and I remember getting the email about it, and it just sent me through like pure shock, because I'm thinking about not just myself, but also the people that work on this campus. Our cafeteria employees, they have children at home, but they have to stay here and make sure that we eat. But we wasn't even allowed to leave our room. So you have students on this campus, and not just this, but the other campus that's very hungry. You never know what goes through other people's mind. People battle with anxiety. So to receive something like that, the only thing that could come throughout everybody, the whole campus, was just initial shock, pure shock.
And I want to turn to you, Mayor Johnson. It seems like everywhere you look in America, Black people are under attack. Every time I say that, people say Black people have always been under attack, but it feels like we are effectively under attack now directly by the current administration and also by the federal government in general. But there are a number of Black cities that have been targeted this year. We talked about DC earlier, and we talked about LA and Memphis, but there are other cities that they're planning on. I heard the president mention New Orleans. I heard Chicago. I've heard Baltimore. I've heard different conversations of other places that might be on the list. What do all those cities have in common? They all have Black leaders.
Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to recognize that all of these cities have Black mayors, or mayors that might be suspected of being Democrat. The reality is, for our organization, we don't ask the question if someone is Democrat or Republican. Mayors are charged to be able to solve problems, and that's what mayors do around the country of all colors, but certainly the African American Mayors Association. We recognize that our power is really rooted in our connection to people, to working together, sharing strategies, amplifying each other's voices. And so we've been very engaged and busy, really helping our member cities and our brother and sister mayors, whether it be with Sister Bass in LA, whether it be with Sister Bowser in DC, whether it was Brother Johnson in Chicago, Brother Scott in Baltimore, and now with Brother Young in Memphis, and helping them to be able to create strategies. But as I think has been said so many times here, that it's important that we have to have an internal strategy and an external strategy. Unfortunately, I've heard even for some of our brother and sister mayors that that they were not being forceful enough or acquiescing to the Trump administration. Let's be real clear about what's at stake here, particularly with Mayor Bowser. The federal government holds all the cards, all the cards. And in a lot of these cities, if the federal government exerts its will on these cities, in our cities, people suffer. So you have to be able to live to fight another day, which is why it's really important for other organizations to help provide these mayors to cover their need to be able to operate, and for them to be able to amplify their voices and say the things that some of these mayors want to be able to say but can't say, because at the end of the day, their inaction or their action might cause people not to be able to eat, or people not to have a place to sleep, or the militarization of their police departments, which will hurt people. So I think to your point, it's a very, very important time, and that's why at the African American Mayors Association, we trying to partner we try to get MOUs with everybody, because we recognize there are Black mayors who need partnership. We need opportunities to be able to connect, and we want you all to be connected with us.
I just want to clarify, when you say MOU, you mean Memorandum of Understanding, right?
Memorandums of understanding, memorandums of agreements, but I think it has to be a strategic way of moving together, moving forward together.
No,
You can be moving and not really doing much of anything.
I just mentioned that because I noticed in the chat earlier, someone asked what a C4 was, and I to explain, it's a 501c4. It's a type of organization under the federal government.
My apologies.
We're using a lot of language here that some people may understand, other people may not understand in the call. So just want to clarify.
Yes, sir.
But I want to go back to you, Carmel Henry, President Henry. You're in DC again. You're dealing with the federal troop presence there. I've noticed that Mayor Bowser has drawn a line, if you will, at the issue of allowing ICE agents to work with the local police force. And the president is upset that the mayor won't allow ICE agents to do that. And I wonder if you could sort of explain to us the logic behind that, because I'm not sure a lot of people, even in Black communities, are fully aware of the danger of that. Because I've seen some people say that why not just let the mayor work with the ICE agents work with the local police? But the police tell us, from what I understand, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the police tell us that it reduces the willingness of local members of the community to cooperate with the police if they feel like they might be turned over to ICE whenever they talk to them. Tell me, am I wrong about that, or is there some other explanation for what's going on?
Well, I think that I just want to echo what Mayor Johnson said in terms of Muriel Bowser in the District of Columbia. So DC is uniquely situated compared to other cities. We are not a state. We are not located in a state. And because of that, I do believe, Muriel Bowser, she has done what she can. Our city council has done what it can to protect its residents. Now, we understand that home rule is under attack. We understand that our civil rights, our constitutional rights are under attack. And so when we think about what Mayor Bowser, what our council, what MPD has done over the last several years in terms of building public trust, building relationships with the community, just last week, the NAACP DC branch, in collaboration with several of our community partners, including MPD, we had a Know Your Rights training. And I think if you're continuing to expand the relationship and improve the relationship with the community in MPD, you have to speak for the people. And so in this instance, I believe that Muriel Bowser, our MPD officers, our MPD chief, they are working to ensure the rights of the district residents. District residents, one thing that we are keeping at the forefront of our mind is home rule. Just tonight, we had a vote in the House. They have voted, and it's to charge 14-year-olds, people as young as 14, as adults. That was passed tonight in the House. We are looking at the federal government. Donald Trump is seeking to overtake our courts. We talk about advocating and pushing through our courts. DC, our courts, we have a commission. Donald Trump, someone that they have now proposed in the House to forego that commission and for Donald Trump to pick our judges. So we are clearly under assault. We are under assault from every angle. And what I think is happening, it's a smart move by our mayor to ensure public trust, to improve public trust, to protect the citizens in the District of Columbia.
And so, Deirdre Malone, you're the vice president in NAACP in Memphis. I wonder if you're concerned about the same issues. Obviously, you don't have the issue of the federal government rewriting the local laws and making 14-year-olds eligible for adult punishment, but you do have the issue of state preemption, where the state of Tennessee can override the rules that are passed by the city of Memphis. So, for example, Memphis passed gun control or gun safety rules in November of last year, and the state doesn't want you to do that.
Right, and they absolutely overturned it. And I'm just looking at the news right now. I'm seeing that Governor Lee is saying that he wants the National Guard to come to Memphis indefinitely until he feels like crime is down. So there's major overreach with our state government. They're not listening to what our local elected officials are saying that we need. We need resources. Mayor Young has said that. Mayor Harris, our county mayor, has said that. And so they need to listen to us. It's major government overreach.
I just want to go back to you again, Carmel Henry. I don't think I got the question I was asking before about the immigrant relations. So are immigrants being, I know, are immigrants being affected by this rule in the sense that it's affecting the relationship between immigrants and the police because of the potential cooperation with ICE?
I think it's not just, it's Black, brown, it's all district residents. So let's just, it's, I think someone said this earlier, it is not a Black or white issue. It is not a American citizen versus the immigrant issue. At this point, we're concerned about all district residents are being attacked. But I think if you add to when ICE is included in policing with our local law enforcement officers, people are less likely to report. So although we say that crime is down, we have to take that into consideration. Is it down because it's actually down, or is it down because it's not being reported out of fear? And I think that is a conversation that we are really not having within the District of Columbia, because we talk about crime, but what about the fear people have now to report the crime that is occurring?
And do you think that DC statehood should be a national issue, not just a local issue, that all Black people should be concerned about this?
DC statehood is a national issue, and we have to keep it at the forefront of our mind, because the reality of it is this could not happen if the District of Columbia was a state. And so in DC, we urge all of our brothers and sisters across this nation to press their members of Congress to push for DC statehood.
All right. All right. Now we're moving toward the end. So I want to direct us to a couple of points here that President Johnson started with in the very beginning of the conversation, in the earlier panel, about connecting the dots. He talked about how all this is happening, the attacks on Black congressional districts, on Black people in Black cities and Black mayors. All this is happening in the context where the federal government is slashing funding for Black communities, slashing funding for Medicare and Medicaid and healthcare services, slashing funding for the Department of Education. I wonder if people are making those connections, and I want to direct this particularly to our two young people on the panel, to Devin and to Kyla. Are you all seeing the connections here between the funding cuts to the Department of Education and the threat of school shutdowns, and how these things are all interrelated?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's kind of it's kind of a running joke amongst a few of my research friends, or my friends that engage in research. It's, oh well, can't do that anymore. Trump took my money, and it's constant. I know at least 5 people off the top of my head that have lost their scholarship, or their entire branch of research has been defunded, and we all know where it's coming from. And that frustration of, well, I didn't do anything wrong. I was actually doing the right thing, pushing the realm of technology forward, and you took that from us. Frustrating.
Have you experienced the same thing, Kyla, in Alabama?
Absolutely, absolutely. There was recently a grant that Trump actually snatched away. It came from the USDA. And in fact, a lot of the HBCUs benefited from this. For example, here in the state of Alabama, Alabama A&M University, which is also an HBCU. I'm starting to also notice that if you pay attention to research and statistics will show that Black people are likely to receive higher educational degrees. So it doesn't just stop at bachelor's degrees. There's master's and doctoral degrees. So if you really connect those dots, you can kind of see why Trump is snatching this away, especially if you have paid attention to Project 2025, because we knew that this was the plan anyway.
Right. Because of the threats you've seen on campus recently, has there been a greater police presence at regular events, at football games and homecomings and things like that, for example?
Yes, I would definitely say that, because we just had our actual first home game, which was 2 days after the threats. We played against Miles College, which is also a fellow HBCU here in the state of Alabama. The police security, it was definitely enhanced a whole lot. I could tell some people, they were kind of a little bit undercover. They didn't want to quite reveal that, hey, I'm the police, but there was definitely some action taken after the threats that were sent to us.
Thank you. So
Even at FAMU, we weren't even directly we weren't even sent threats directly, but even in an abundance of caution, our university actually shut down on Friday in response to those threats. And well, shut down meaning we went virtual, and then had an enhanced police presence that Thursday evening and afternoon, and the next day, on Friday and Saturday, at our football game as well.
And I don't think people really fully understand. I used to teach a few different colleges how disruptive it is to have to change from being in person to be virtual. We saw this during COVID, and all these things are having an impact on people. And the toll of this hasn't yet all been calculated. But I want to get a question for everyone as we wrap this up. What are we learning from all this about how we react? What should communities who are not sure, uncertain about our current climate, what should they be doing? What should we all be doing to protect ourselves and build long-term power?
If I can go first, do something. I was watching Senator Cory Booker say his father or uncle used to tell him that you can't let your inability to do everything stop you from doing something. So first, do something. Find out whatever it is that you are able and capable and proficient in, and do that. Find out a way that your skills mixes in with how you can help your community. one. And two, look to your left or to your right. Find the people that are in your community that are also caring about your community. We must band together. We cannot go anywhere by ourselves. We cannot climb this mountain by ourselves. This is not anything new. America was built upon the hatred and denigration of our people. This is merely the newest iteration of what my father and his fathers and my mother and her mothers dealt with and faced. So we cannot just look at that mountain and say, ah, that's too big to climb. No, do something. Take that first step. Look at your feet. And I think over the summer, I was on a phone call with my mother, and we were talking about how the voter registration rules changed for women, and how getting a passport was kind of you can go around that new rule, and how it felt like, dang, my mom was telling me, dang, it's all these women are not gonna be able to vote, but what can I do about it? I said, Mama, you lead a bunch of women in your youth group at church. You got 30 women there. Get your 30, make it a whole event, take it to the post office or wherever you want to do, take that picture, get your passport, and then that's your 30. You did your part. You did something. And if all the churches in Alabama, because that's that Southern Belt, we got a lot of churches. We get all the Black women in all these churches to go get our passports. That's a lot of votes right there. So we have to, and as I minister to her, I minister to myself. Even right now, as FAMU is getting attacked by our Florida state government, I can't focus on everything. I can only focus on FAMU. And so do something, and yeah, one, do something, and two, make a coalition with your people to your left or to your right.
Yeah, it reminds me of the environmentalist slogan to think globally and act locally. Think of the larger problem, and then what can you do in your own community to make an impact? Mayor Johnson.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to jump in.
Oh, yeah.
If I may. I think it's important for us to remember who we are and whose we are. Prayer, first of all, prayer still works. We have to, in order to look forward, we have to look back, and we are children of struggle. Sustainability is in our DNA. And so although we're learning and building and reacting in real time, we're not powerless, and we can't be pitiful and powerful at the same time. So for us, we have to choose the powerful path. And so the most important thing I think we could do right now is really to stay informed, stay engaged, and stay connected to each other. There are wedges driving us apart for all these different isms that we have. And this is the time that we really draw it together, because as it said, this is not just a Black issue. Evil is real and evil is universal. And so when good people of goodwill come together, we're able to change the world. Then we have to be intentional about building long-term power. And that means investing in civic education, strengthening neighborhoods, supporting local businesses and small businesses, and ensuring that our young people see a future for themselves. The reality is that although it seems like a very, very long time, next year is here now. And so we have to be able now to put ourselves in a position. And we have it, because I hate to say it, but everybody on this call didn't go the way that we thought they would go. And they've learned a lesson for it. So now you correct what you've learned, and now let's do something more positive and put people into the places, and also support these mayors that are out here who signed up to do good work and who are being attacked every day.
And Vice President Malone, what would you encourage us that we need to be doing to protect ourselves?
I want to say two things. You have the NAACP, they have toolkits, utilize them. They've been on the ground for more than 100 years. They know how to engage you in a fight, and they know how to win. So utilize the NAACP and the toolkits. That's what we lean on here at the Memphis branch. And then I wear another hat. I'm the president of the National Women's Political Caucus. We are focused on the midterms. I was really, my heart just dropped when President Johnson spoke in the other panel talking about, we might not have a midterm. I'm committed to electing women at every level of government, and that's what my organization does. And so we're in this fight with the NAACP and committed to that work.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because I think people forget sometimes that women are the majority of the population of the United States of America, and we've never had a woman president. And also that white men are only 29% of the US population, but they control nearly 90% of the power. Joy Reid asked a question the other day on her show. She said, "Why are white men so angry considering they control everything?" So I think we really need to start remembering who we are, what our power is, and start to reassert that. Kyla, you get the penultimate answer, and then Carmel, you get the final answer. Kyla.
So it's something that my mama taught me growing up that her mom taught her. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And Devin, he took the words right out of my mouth. So I'm going to just say that he most definitely did. But we have to do something about it. And this goes back to me saying take action a while back. So when I say take action, because I know someone in the chat had a question about what I meant by taking action, that can be something as small as saying a prayer, doing a phone call, hosting rallies. If we don't stand for something together as not just the NAACP, but as a minority community as a whole, we'll fall for anything. And like you just said, white men only make up 29% of the population. However, it's unfortunate that they take the role of government predominantly.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because when you say we'll fall for anything if you don't stand for something, because that reminds me of the fact that I see a lot of people who are being interviewed on TV who are Black or on social media who are saying that they support some of these takeovers taking place in various cities. But that is a minority of people in our communities. And so we need to be sure that those voices don't drown out the majority of Black people who do not support that, who want to make sure that our communities are protected. And finally, Carmel, I'll give you the last word. What can we do? What should we be doing to protect ourselves in this climate?
We must be intentional. We must be united. So we're in different cities, but this is not the time to be divisive with your mayors or local government. We must unite. We must inform one another. We must organize. We must listen. We need to be advocates for our communities. So to Devin's point, maybe just talking to someone, listening to them, what do they need? People need resources, organizing, making sure that we're organized in our approach, that we're collaborating with various community organizations, we're collaborating with local government, we're keeping informed on the policies and procedures that are put forth. Every day it's something new, and that we're advocating, we're being advocates. This organization, the NAACP, was founded on advocacy. We stand on advocacy. We stand on being intentional in that advocacy. And so I remind everyone and I charge everyone to be an advocate for their community, whether it's registering to vote, listening to your neighbor, advocating with your local leadership, making sure that you are remembering the mission and the vision of this association.
And with that, we close. And I thank you, Carmel Henry, the DC branch president of the NAACP, Kyla Holder, a student at Alabama State University and Alabama State University NAACP, the Honorable Van R. Johnson, the second president of the African American Mayors Association and mayor of the city of Savannah, Deirdre Malone, the Memphis branch first vice president of the NAACP, and Devin Nobles, a student at Florida A&M University. And thank you to the NAACP and to Derek Johnson for convening this. Thank you to everyone who participated. I cannot believe how much chatter there has been on this chat room over here on the side. It's hard for me to keep up with everything on the side and everything in the conversation, but this has been an amazing conversation. And with the charge that we move forward and do something, I think we can move on. Thank you. I'll bring it back to Phaedra now.
Thank you so much, Keith, and a big round of applause to all of our panelists tonight. Those were amazing conversations. I encourage you all to drop some hand clap emojis in the chat, give some love to our young leaders, to our activists, and to our seasoned civil rights leaders as well. Big thank you to Keith for moderating both conversations, and a hand clap to each and every one of you who stayed on this call. We know it was a later call. We're trying to accommodate the whole country in different time zones, but we knew that we wanted to address this. So we've got 3 quick things for you as we close out. We have heard from our NAACP field and others, and you're asking for resources on how to defend democracy in this moment. And so we've put together a slate of resources, quick links and guides for you in this moment. And I'm going to ask my colleague, Trevon Williams, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communications, to come walk through some of the tools that we have aggregated for you.
Thank you, Phaedra. Good evening, everybody. In the interest of time, I have heard some amazing insights from our leaders from all across the country. And one of the themes that we are hearing consistently from across our leaders is with regards to the notion that we are responsible for taking action in this moment. One of the most important actions that we can take right now within our community is making sure that we are informing and educating our community as much as humanly possible right now. One of the biggest things we can do is make sure our communities are safe and informed around the things that are taking place in real time. The slide that's on the screen right now is regards to real-time updates that we've made with regards to some of the areas of issues, areas of interest, excuse me, that the organization is faceting in real time. So one in particular that we're hearing with regards to you all, the deployment of the National Guard is what we've heard a lot around the National Guard over the last several weeks itself. Wanted to inform you all around what is permissible, what is not permissible based off of your National Guard. Worked very closely with our policy and our OGC office to lay out exactly what is and is not permissible based on your National Guard itself. Those resources are made available. Also, we made updates to our 411 on the 50. How do you navigate with your engagement, excuse me, with the law enforcement? How are you to engage? What is permissible? What is not permissible? What is consent and what's not? We want you to be able to use this information to bring that back into your local community so you can make sure that you're educating your community on how to safely engage with law enforcement itself. And then another one with regards to knowing your rights with regards to engage with ICE itself and immigration itself. We know that these things are popping up all over the country itself, and they bring a lot of anxiety and angst as well. Knowing how to navigate those spaces becomes very, very vital for our community as well itself. And so we've made these resources available to you all alongside that as well. Staying safe with protesting yourself. As we've heard from many of our colleagues across the leadership space as well. Being able to get boots on the ground, we want you to be able to do so safely within these spaces as well. And then also around redistricting. Redistricting itself, we've heard it from Missouri, we've heard it in with regards to the efforts that are taking place in California, Texas, etc. But we want you to be educated on what exactly goes into redistricting as well. And so some of these resources are made available with the page itself. I asked my colleagues to drop the link in our chat so you have access to it as well. We'll make sure we circulate that as well. But we wanted you to have direct access to this to be able to circulate it to your local units and to your local community as well. We want you to distribute this information to make sure that we are empowering our community as much as possible around what it is that they have the ability to do in real time. We want you to be active. We want you to be informed, but we want you to be safe at all costs. While your NAACP is fighting through legal actions and through advocacy, we want you to take all the necessary actions to the education as possible. That link for the webpage is made available in the chat itself, and we'll be updating this and making more information available over the next couple of days and weeks. I think we'll have some more resources available even in the next couple of days as well. And we'll make sure we circulate that as well through our field and advocacy team as well. I'll pass it back over to you, Phaedra, for more information as well.
Thank you, Trevon, and thank you to the field for just letting us know the needs that you had so that we could create them and get them pushed back out. And like Trevon said, we will continually update these as we have more resources available. Many of you have asked, how can we support our young folks on campuses? And so I'm bringing up Derek Lewis, our interim National Director of Youth and College, to report out on an incident reporting form that we've created to track these such instances. Derek?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Shout out to everyone that's still rocking with us at 9:50 on the East Coast. I'm Derek Lewis. I serve as the interim national director of the Youth and College Division. And as we all know, and as we just heard from our youth panelists that we just heard from the past conversation, is that our education institutions are under attack. Not just from a sense of what we're seeing from DEI rollbacks, but from racial discrimination to safety threats that is external and internal. That's not just at HBCUs, but at PWIs, at all institutions where there are youth, there is a target. And what we're saying in this moment is that we have to protect our youth. We have to make sure that they are safe, and we have to ensure that we are able to document. Yes, we're talking about what's happening here now in September of 2026, but if we can reflect back and we can look back in 2022 in February in Black History Month, where there were over 12 HBCUs that were targeted externally. In 2023, where there was a gunman that came to the campus of Edward Waters University at the entrance gate, What we have to understand is that, one, we have to document this. We have to make sure that we're taking the proactive measures, one, to understand that we can have an understanding of what's actually going on the ground. How can we support? How can we advocate? But two, so that we can also build the data that we need to hold institutions and individuals accountable. So our incident report form should be being shared in the chat with you all. We don't need you to all participate or all to necessarily complete this form, but for those who are understanding and know what's actually going on the ground, please let us know. We look at this as a sense of being proactive, and when we are sharing these things, or when you all are advocating for these for interventions or for an investigation, that oftentimes they may not be taken serious. The NAACP is taken serious, and this is our tool in the way that we're doing it. So we're asking that our NAACP units that are both in youth units, youth and college division, yes, but also our branches to share from what you're hearing on the ground. Again, for anything that may be related from a DEI rollback, from racial discrimination to external and internal safety threats, so that we can make sure that our children and our students are safe. That is it for me, Phaedra. I'll kick it back to you to continue and take us out.
Thank you, Derek. And as Tyler comes up, we just want to say accountability, right? As you saw, Derek outlined, we know that a time of reckoning will come for these things, and so we need to track and capture and create the data for the accountability. So type in the chat accountability. Speaking of accountability, at the beginning of this call, we asked you all to verify your voter registration. We know that we are heading into elections in 2025 and midterm elections in 2026. And we know that that people are often changing the roles and kicking people off, and we need to always be verified on our voting registration. And so we are able to pull those numbers for all of you who verified your registration. We believe in a feedback loop over here. So Tyler, how did we do?
Phaedra, thank you so much. We had 733 individuals. I just had another one roll in just a second ago. 733 people verified their registration on this call. And I want to thank everyone for taking part in this action. Also in the chat, I've seen how can we get these tools? What can we use these? The QR code itself will be included in this follow-up information that is sent, the follow-up email that is sent out from this call, as well as for members, your requesting request form for your unit-specific and branch-specific vote.org links. Vote.org is the tool that we're using. You may have noticed that when you walked through the simplicity of the form. I saw hundreds of people saying, verified and registered, verified and registered. I did it so easily. How do I get this QR code for my community? How do I use this for football games? How do I use this in real life? How do I use this outside of a Zoom? So we will have this available for requests for members throughout the form, and the QR code itself will be used for wide publication. You can use that anywhere. So just as Phaedra said, wanted to close that loop and let you all know that of the folks on this call, we had 733 fill out that form, verify that they are registered, take that first step of protest. Now we move forward to protection, and then we move forward to power. We're going to protect the vote, and we're going to build power politically all throughout this year and building up to 2026, where we make our voices heard. So thank you very much, Phaedra, and I believe I am kicking it to Chairman Leon Russell to close us out.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully the host can turn on my camera. And I want to simply thank the 1,700 folks who have joined us, well, actually almost 2,000 folks who joined us this evening. Also want to say to you that it is important for us to remember that we are a resilient people. Understand that we have been here since 1619. Times have been better, they have been worse, but we have survived, and we will get past this current period. But we have to understand that civil rights and social justice is not a competition, and that's why you saw us this evening bring together a collaboration of our partner organizations to have you understand that when we work together, we can overcome this kind of thing that is going on now. I want to thank all of the leaders who joined us in our first panel and our second panel. I want to encourage folks. I've spent 2 evenings straight with Kyla and Devin, and they are the future. They are the present. They give me energy. They should give you energy because it's clear that our future will be in good hands. With that, thank you all for participating in this webinar. We look forward to other opportunities where we can come together as community and talk about how we move forward. Finally, it is important to understand that yes, we have governor's elections in New Jersey and Virginia. We have mayor's elections in New York and other cities. But let's all understand that the action is at the legislative level and at city council, county commission, and school board levels. We must be active at all levels, and we must put ourselves forward to run for those positions. And so with that, understand, community, that the responsibility to save our democracy, the responsibility to save our civil rights and social justice gains is in all of our hands. We must educate, we must litigate, we must agitate. But yes, we must do something. Have a good evening. Thank you all. Thanks the staff for putting this together. Good evening.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For everyone who's asked in the chat, the recording will be sent out to everyone who registered. It will also be housed on YouTube. Thank you all and have a wonderful night.